And welcome everybody to a special episode of the House Jack City Backstage Sports Edition. I'm your host, Rob Eggers, along with Roy Herman and our special guest, a friend of mine, someone I worked with for the past 2 seasons at the NFL IPP. He's the head of the NFL IPP. James Cook is on the show, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome, James. How you doing, boss?
Thanks, Rob. Yeah, doing well. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. So we got a lot to cover today, James. A lot of things have been going on this season, the second season for me with the NFL IPP. A few signings. We'll talk about that. And also, Rees Zammit has been the big headline of what's going on, switching over to rugby, coming over to American football. So we'll be talking about that as well. And then, of course, the IPP documentary. So it's a big show today. We got about 45 minutes with you. So we're going to try to cram all this in as fast as possible, but without rushing it. So welcome to the show, and let's get started. James, how you feeling? I know you got to be tired.
Yeah, a little bit tired, but energized, I'd say, is the word. I think we've had a busy couple of weeks, busy couple of months, really. But I think guys starting to sign and starting to have some success stories, I think really gives you some energy that you were sorely lacking before. So I feel like we're in a good place.
Absolutely. And, we just finished up the 10 weeks. We had a few guys that just got signed.
Mm-hmm.
I know, I love Charlie Smyth. We've been talking back and forth on Instagram. Patrick just got signed yesterday to the Jacksonville Jaguars. I just talked to him. He said, he said, thank you. Appreciate it. Now let's get to work. The mentality and the poise that these guys have and the brotherhood and the family feeling is just amazing, and I'm just so proud of these guys. And I know Pat, that was his second time back. So coming back with the adversity, I want to talk about Pat a little bit, just coming back with the adversity that he had last year, which, coming back this year and what he went through with also publicizing he lost his father 3 years ago. Wanted to do this for him. I think this is a blessing for him. And I know you had to talk to him. What were the words that Patrick had to say after he was signed? I know he called you right away.
So I was actually with Pat at the time. We were both on the phone with the Jags together, and I think in a moment like that, it's mostly disbelief. I think he's still trying to catch up with all the emotions, and it didn't really sink in. And so really, we've spoken in the last couple of days now that he's actually got to Jacksonville and he's put pen to paper and he's gone to work and he's now part of that organization. And I think the overwhelming feeling was just it was a long time coming. I think Pat obviously he's had a difficult couple of years with his dad, losing his dad, but then also he was a part of this program a year ago. Had an opportunity to go to Detroit. We kind of thought we'd got to that moment with him, and then unfortunately had a medical issue, which meant he had to return back to Australia, and so he had to kind of pick up the pieces and rebuild. And the fact that rebuild has culminated in him signing with the Jags and going to a place that I personally think is a great fit. I think it's an organization that deeply wants him there and is excited to have him there. I think it's a great thing. So, I think I caught Pat in that kind of disbelief phase, and I think it's he reported for work on Monday, and I think reality's settling in now nicely for him.
That's amazing. Good, right?
Yeah, when you have a player like that, and like Rob mentioned, you had to come back through some adversity and some things of that nature. How do you work with him, and what are some of the things you do to, balance the line of nurturing and trying to be supportive, but yet a little tough love to kind of, give someone a little kick in the pants? How do you balance that, and what do you do to help develop a player like that and get him back on his feet to, where he needs to be?
I think it's every single player is different, and I don't think there's not one size fits all approach to any of them when it comes to their physical development, their mental development, or even just dealing with them as human beings. I think every single person needs a tailored approach, and the more you know the person and the more you know the player, the better suited you're going to be to do that. Really, and with Pat, I've known Pat for a number of years now. And I've really gotten a chance to know him and get to know what works for him and what doesn't. And Pat is someone who you can coach him hard. You don't have to worry about getting him going each day. You don't have to think, right, how do I motivate Pat to go to work today? Like he takes care of that for himself. So with Pat, it's just making sure that you have a plan in place and he feels confident in that. But really, a guy like Pat, so he's a dream to coach. Really, he's a pleasure to work with, and he's not one of those guys you need to get going for sure, which makes my job a lot easier. And credit to him, and credit to his family as well.
And with the Jaguars too. I mean, he had a former tight end coach with them in Ben Boyack. And, I had the opportunity and the pleasure to film Pat, Praise, Lewis, and Flo, and all of them, just watching how hard all of them worked together, and just the brotherhood. That inspires me. And just watching them get inspired and having each other's back and motivating them. I think that's why I feel it hit a little different this year for me personally, just how they were coaching each other. Come on, guys, let's go. Come on. You got this. Because, it gets frustrating, right? Everything gets frustrating. Even on our show, some cameras won't work, some audio issues. We got to pat each other on the back and say, we got this. Don't let it bother you. Did you see a lot more of the brotherhood of this year, more because it was televised, right? But do you feel a lot of that motivation for the guys was because of the guys themselves?
Yeah, entirely. I think the success of this program and whatever direction this program goes in, you always put the credit back on the players, because we can do whatever we want with them for 10 weeks and prep them and give them as much guidance as we can. But once they go to teams and the real work starts, we're not there. I'm here. I'm back in London. So really credit to them when that works out and when things do go well for them. And I think the camp is an extension of that. I think when the camp goes well and we get really good, productive 10 weeks and good work happens, I think it's because of the players. And I said to our coaches and our staff at the beginning of this process, you want to get to a position where you're giving ownership of the program over to the players, that they're driving it and they're running with it, and they're the ones that are setting the culture and the standards and the expectations. Because once you get to a point where I don't have to tell anyone not to be late because the players are telling each other, that's a really powerful thing. So that's where we want to get to, and I think credit to the players for getting us there.
Excellent.
Yeah, and James, I want to also delve into, once these players graduate and move on to the next level, if they have some struggles along the way, do you take their phone calls, or do they reach out to you and say, Coach, or Mr. Cook, I feel like I'm maybe losing my confidence or my way, and I just wanted to talk to you off the record and away from my Jacksonville Jaguars or Kansas City Chiefs, and just say, can you help me and give me some advice? Do players reach out like that, and do you just kind of help them out along the way and stay in contact?
Yeah, those relationships don't ever go away. They're really, I think the relationship with the players on this program really transcends the work. It's not a 9 to 5 job. That's what I tell people all the time. It's not a case of it hits Friday at 5 o'clock and all of a sudden I'm off for the weekend. Because if a guy from the class of 2020 or 2019 or 2021 calls me on a Saturday or a Sunday and they need something or they want to talk about something, you pick up that call, because you're not dealing with numbers, you're dealing with real human lives. And I think it's important for us to be accessible to them, and they'll continue to help us. And yeah, it was only literally in the last couple of weeks I've been working with one of our guys from the class of 2020 and helping him with, sometimes it's a small thing like they just have a question on travel or visas or something like that. And sometimes it's bigger stuff in that they maybe have just been let go and they're looking for their next landing spot and they're trying to continue their career. So we're always there for them. It definitely transcends the work that we do. And I think it's one of the best things about the work that we get to do.
Excellent. So with that said, we're talking about the guys that made it. Lewis, Rees Zammit, he's with the Kansas City Chiefs. We got Charlie Smyth that just signed with New Orleans Saints, and now Patrick Murtagh with the Jacksonville Jaguars. So with that said, let's explain a little bit how the IPP program started, what it's all about, and where it's going in the future. So when did the IPP start?
So formally, the IPP started in 2017. And when I say formally, I mean that's when the league, we would allocate players to clubs to participate in this international player pathway program as a way of creating opportunities for international players. Now, in 2015, there was really some early exploratory work. Really, the whole thing was founded by Adam Dirty, who's now the defense coordinator at the Seattle Seahawks. He's from London himself. And Osi Umenyiora. He played for the Giants and for the Falcons for a long time and was one of the best to ever do it. And really, they started working with a very small group of athletes back in 2015-16, and just kind of had a crazy idea in their heads, and were fortunate enough to work under Alistair Kirkwood in the NFL UK office, who was kind of creative and ambitious enough to give them that room to go and do so. And so with a little bit of money and with a couple of players, they tried to see if they could get some traction and try and get players signed. And fortunately, they did. They had some early success stories. They had an unknown Londoner, F.A. Obada, signed with the Cowboys in 2015, and just from there was just more buy-in and more belief that, you know what, actually we might have something on our hands here. And so the rest of the business got more involved, and it kind of grew and scaled. And then in 2017, the program formally allocated players. We sent 4 players to the NFC South, to each of the NFC South teams. And from there, it's just kind of gone from strength to strength. And we went through a good phase of 17, 18, 19, 20, 21. We had at least one player. Well, we had one player from each of those classes go on to make an active roster. So very quickly, this became more than a gimmick. It wasn't just getting players on practice squads and trying to make a story out of it. It was, wow, this program's actually producing players that are contributing. They're playing. We have starting players that have come from this program playing in the league now. And so it's kind of grown from there. And I think we're now at a stage in its development where it's a very viable, legitimate place for NFL teams to go and source talent from. And I think as the league and as the teams want to expand internationally, the IPP's got to be a place that they come and stop by and see what's on offer. And again, the players get us to this point, and they're the reason why we're here and the successes they've had. And I can only see that continuing in the future, and the class of 24 just being one reason why.
I mean, this goes way beyond the development the league has talked about, or they have the international game each year where the pro teams go over and play a game in London. And do you see that helping potentially maybe with a pro NFL franchise that could spawn off and actually be a part of London one day?
I don't think it's off the cards. I think it's something that the league is talking about and thinking about, and the commission has been vocal about that in public appearances he's made, talking about the viability of a franchise overseas. I think whether the NFL needs to do that, I don't know. I think that's something that the league is exploring, and I think it's not one solution. I think there's lots of different ways. Like the NFL is playing more international games. We've announced we're playing in Brazil this year. There's a game in Spain next year. We've been playing in London and Germany and Mexico already. And I think that's one strategy, playing more games abroad. I think the IPP is another strategy, more international representation, more players in the league that look and sound like our fans do because they're from other parts of the world. So I think there's loads of different ways you can approach it and lots of different strategies. I don't think it's just one solution. I think the viability of a franchise is something that's been spoken about. Whether that's the answer, I think everyone's doing the work on finding out if it is or not. But one thing for sure is that the league and the sport is growing very rapidly overseas, and I think it's only a good thing for the game.
I had the opportunity, speaking of London last year, James, and when I saw you and George in London when I was with IMG Academy, and we had a game out there. We had the opportunity to go to Tottenham Stadium to watch the Bills and Jaguars. Phenomenal. Like just the energy itself. So coming from me as an American going overseas to actually watch a game, there's a lot of big potential that what Roy just asked and what you're talking about, that it possibly could happen in the future. It was just an amazing atmosphere, beautiful stadium, by the way, and just an amazing game. That was an awesome game. What a comeback. But, I honestly do feel that more games. I mean, I think the Eagles and Packers are actually starting week 1 in Mexico. Am I correct?
That's the Brazil game. Yeah.
Oh, the Brazil game. Sorry.
In Brazil, in week 1, which is, I think is a huge splash to be able to, to pick those two franchises to play in that market on week 1. I think it's huge.
Yes, absolutely. So with that said too, the IPP documentary, this is the first year that they went behind the scenes, and I think it was a huge success. The NFL UK, by the way, everyone check that out. NFL IPP documentary. Go to there and watch all the episodes. I promise you'll be locked in after episode 1. What was your thoughts about the IPP documentary? Do you think it was a good idea? Do you think that it got more in depth of kind of explaining what the IPP is all about and kind of showing all the cultures that were involved?
Yeah, truthfully, I was a little bit skeptical at first when the idea first came to my attention about sending a camera crew down. I think you always want more exposure. You want people talking about the program, but also the idea of a camera crew living with us in our environment for 10 full weeks. It's quite a daunting one. And I think a big part of my job is about managing and limiting and eliminating distractions wherever they may appear. And so part of me was thinking, this might be something we have to deal with. But credit to the whole NFL UK team and 8 Seconds Creative who came in and actually were running the cameras and producing the series. I think it was handled incredibly well from beginning to end. I think the guys who were capturing the series were very conscious of what the guys needed, when they needed to be on camera, when they needed to focus on their work. They were good guys, Tom Perry and Hugo Petit at their core, and really just did a great job. And so I think the longer that they were around, they just became a part of the furniture. We didn't have to worry about them being a distraction because they were there. They filmed literally everything we did on a daily basis. So it was easy for them to assimilate into our environment. And truthfully, I think it's been a great thing for the program. I think I've had a lot of people reaching out, saying that they've watched it, they've enjoyed it. I've had a lot of people saying to me that they actually understand the work that we do way more now because of that show and that existing. And it's a great place to signpost people, when they ask about what we do and what it works. You can say, look, episode 1, here you go, give this a watch and you tell me. So I think I'm really happy it happened. I think it was a good thing for the program. I think it's helped move the program forward. And it's a great historical reference as well. We have all these moments. We have Lewis, we have Charlie, we have these guys putting pads and helmets on for the first time. That's an incredible thing because we hope for them to have really long, successful NFL careers. So I'm happy we were able to capture that and that people are enjoying the series as well.
Yeah, the series is huge. It reminds me of HBO with the Hard Knocks in the NFL. And this is a great way, especially with reality television being so big. But has this been broached or brought up about possibly getting on Netflix? Because, this is stunning. It is absolutely amazing. And to get it on a bigger platform, has that been thought about, approached? And if you need somebody to document or help you get there, I know a guy named Rob Eggers who I think he would help you out immensely being a part of that. So
I know that there's definitely an appetite to do more. I think there's definitely an appetite for the program to be just reached by more people and more people to know about it and a brighter spotlight. And if that comes in the form of a longer form documentary series sitting in other places, I think that's definitely something that our team here are going to want to look at. Whether that's happening in the near future or not remains to be seen. I'm the football guy. I stay focused on the athletes and make sure we take care of that, because without the players, we haven't got anything to sell. We haven't got a product. So I'll take care of that. But yeah, for sure, I think I've always thought the storylines are interesting enough. I think there's definitely enough intrigue in it, and you hope for more opportunities like that to materialize in future.
absolutely.
And to add on to that, the whole story, like you said, storyline, James. It was a storyline because what was it leading up to? Pro Day, right? It was leading up to Pro Day, and I'll play the collage that I did behind the scenes after Pro Day was done. It was just an amazing experience from beginning to end, and just seeing how hyped the guys were, and they effing killed it at Pro Day. And it was just amazing to see every single guy focused, locked in. Like you said, the distractions of the documentary, that you kind of just get used to the cameras being in your face. You're like, all right, it's Tom. Shout out to Tom, by the way. Love you, guy. And, just knowing that you're always getting that camera in your face, the interviews and the distractions. Do you feel, though, that this documentary might even has helped the players get set for all the publicity they're going to be getting with the media and all the pressure? And, if they do bad in a game, how are they going to, have the adversity to answer those questions? You think that this might have even helped these guys too mentally for this documentary?
It can't have hurt. It can't hurt for sure. I think the guys did a really good job beginning to end of just managing outside noise. And I think that managing outside noise and distractions is something that you can't just figure out how to do that one day. I think you have to practice it. And I think the series and the publicity that we created around the program this year, I think was a really good way for them, kind of a very controlled way for them to manage that. And they did a great job of it. So, I'd like to think that any of our players, if they get a camera put in their face now, they're going to be ready for it. They're going to be used to it by now, and I think that's it can't be a bad thing.
Go ahead, Roy.
Yeah. So also, I wanted to ask you this about the alumni coming back. Do you have plans where you would bring some of these guys? And obviously, Lewis signing with Kansas City is huge, right? They're right now a dynasty team. So with him or just any other former alumni, do you have plans maybe to bring them back in the fold where they can come in and volunteer or just help out with the future and coach or run some programs? you see like a Major League Baseball where a legend will be like Ryan Sandberg comes to spring training and helps out with the Cubs just on a part-time basis. Do you have any plans like that to bring these guys back and speak to the futures?
I would love that to happen. And fortunately, I don't need to have plans, because what happens every year inevitably is the second I get back into camp, sometimes the very day I land in camp, I have all of our alumni hit me up. My phone blows up and they all say, "When can I come back? When can I see the guys? When can I give back? What do you need me to do?" So fortunately, I don't need to put those wheels in motion, because it really comes from the players themselves. I think when a guy comes through the program and he graduates and he goes onto a team, and some like Jordan or Jakob or Efe have gone on to be really good players in this league and have played and started for their clubs. And their natural reaction is to say, "Hey, can I come back? Can I give back to the next group?" And it's funny you mentioned that. I've already had Lewis, Charlie, and Pat, who have all signed, all already say to me, "You have to let me know when you're back next year, because I can't wait to meet the next group you bring along." So that's the easiest one to do, because the want is there, and I think guys leave this program really feeling like they're a part of something bigger than themselves, and so it's very rewarding when that happens.
And that's on you. That's the culture that you have created. So kudos to you, where you just let it organically happen, and then you sit back and you just watch it bloom, right? That's cool.
Yeah, and look, credit to everyone who touches this thing. I think the word culture is thrown around a lot in sports, and sometimes too much. I think culture is no small thing. I think when you say, "What do you have a good culture? What is your culture? What is like culture?" Is they're the very shared ideas and beliefs that shape your everyday actions and behaviors, and that's no small thing. And you can't create that quickly, and there's no shortcut to that. And so to have a culture where players do want to come back and they do want to be a part of it, it's so much bigger than one person. It's so much bigger than 1 year. I think the players' love for the program and then wanting to return to it is a credit to every player, every coach, every staff member that has come through this thing since 2015 and touched it and influenced it in the way that they have. And so I think that's when you come through it and you feel like you're very proud to have been a part of it.
And James, you were talking about, how the guys were excited to come back for the next class, and obviously Chew, a good, friend of mine, and he's with the Kansas City Chiefs. He'll be on the main roster coming up this year. Congrats to him. And also CJ came back, and it's just cool to see the old guys coming in and working, and they get right to work. And even Jordan Mailata came in from the Eagles. I had the opportunity to meet him because I'm a huge Eagles fan, but it was awesome to see him work with the guys, and just you just have that mindset, right? We talk about mental health, and me and Roy are big advocates when it comes to mental health. Do you feel that, if someone's down and out in this game, when they see like a star that's already in the NFL and they're already down, they're not believing in themselves, and they see that star power coming in and working with them and say, "You're doing good, keep it going," and then they have those personal meetings with them and they say, "Hey, everything's going to be fine, this is what you're in for." Do you feel like when the guys come back, do they help with the mental health with the guys? Is that something that occurs behind the scenes?
Oh, hugely. I think I try, from my lens and the seat that I sit in, I try and give these guys everything I can. But the one thing I can't give them is the perspective of a player. I didn't play in the NFL. And so whenever I can get that perspective in the building, I think it's always a huge opportunity. So Jordan and Kenneth and CJ and Chew, they can give those guys, our players, advice and perspectives and viewpoints that I simply can't. And when they do come in, I think that goes a long way for the players feeling more prepared for the opportunity that they're going into. They can sit with a Chew, and Chew can say, "Yeah, you know what? This is what camp actually looks like. This is what time I wake up every day. This is what I typically have for my lunch every day." And you get into the minute
Right.
details. And so when our players go into those environments, they're like, "Yeah, it's just like Chew told me."
Sure. And as I look across the
I feel
landscape,
ready for it.
Oh,
I'm
a little
sorry.
internet buffer there. That's all good.
As
So
I look
I'm good
across
now. Can you hear me?
as I look across the landscape of all sports, and just to touch on what Rob was saying with mental health, some teams employ a mental health skills coach who comes in and just talks to the player, about visualizing what they're going to do before they even go out there. Even as someone like myself who I bowl, but before I go out there, I'm already visioning the strikes or the things that I'm going to, I already got the game ready in my head before I go out there and do that. Do you have people on staff, or are you looking for people? And is that a program that you're looking to enhance over the future?
I think we're definitely looking to enhance it. I think you're always wanting to be better in that area. I think you're always going to look at new ways to innovate and be better at that. We did tap into some resources at IMG Academy this year. Pete Pachurik in the leadership and character development team. I think he really added a lot of value and ran some really great sessions with our guys in that sense. And then you've also got kind of a really great roster of mental health professionals and support on staff at IMG, and they're always so willing to help and jump in and support with our guys if and when needed. And then to Rob's point as well, I think our former players coming back and kind of putting that human touch on the whole experience, I think is really big. I think they just they really make this more real for the guys, and they can help them deal with issues before they come up because they've lived through them themselves, and they can say things like, don't make the same mistake I did, do this instead. And so you like to think that every single year that comes through, every class of the IPP is more prepared than the one before it.
And with that said, we got about 20 minutes left with James. And James, thank you so much again for joining us. This is a pleasure. It's an honor. It's been awesome again to work with you the past 2 seasons. And it's honestly very inspiring to me. You actually helped me push to get this podcast back and up and running. And Roy can be my guy for that one and back me on that, because we did run the show in the past. And we wanted to bring something back, and it was just perfect timing. And to have you on and to share the story and go behind the scenes backstage with us is just amazing. So thank you. And I'll probably say thank you 600 million times before the show's over, but thanks again for coming on, my friend. And we're coming down to the final stretch, and everyone wants to hear Louis Rees Zammit. He is the one that is, been publicized. He's been signed with the Kansas City Chiefs, going from rugby player to American football. I know you've been on previous shows, and I know you're probably exhausted talking about it. But I know we're happy for Louis, and I've had the honor for 10 weeks to actually film Louis personally, and just watching his footwork. And I told him, man, you have the footwork. Like, the footwork is what, and this is speed itself, right? Like, he was clocked at 24 miles an hour in the rugby field. And just watching his burst of speed after like 20, 30 yards is unbelievable. I think he's going to do just fine in Kansas City, especially with the new kickoff rule that's going to be in place. Tell us about Louis and how, and he just started the spring training, correct?
Yeah, he did. He's actually in Dallas right now, training with Patrick Mahomes and getting ready for their season coming up. And Louis was a pleasure, beginning to end. I really thoroughly enjoyed working with Louis. I think when you work with an athlete of that caliber and that profile, there's always the inherent risk that they're going to bring with them a lot of baggage, a lot of distractions. There might be a bit of a diva, and none of that happened with Louis. He's an incredibly grounded young man. He wants to go to work every day. And I think above everything else, I think this opportunity and what it presented to him was deeply important to him. And he showed that, not with his words, but by the way he went about his work every day. Got a chance to meet with his family, and when you meet with them, you realize where it all comes from, how grounded he is and where that comes from. And he has such a great support network with them, and they're really good people. And it was a lot of fun. I think Louis probably blocks out external distractions better than anyone I've ever met, because with him, there is a lot of them. The day he announced he was leaving rugby, it was a huge story, not only in the UK, but across rugby playing nations all over the world. And to manage that in the way that he did and get into our camp literally a few days later, and just go straight to work. And that's what happens, right? You end up good things happening. And he signed that bit of paper with the Chiefs. And I think he was a little blown away by everything. But I think those of us that were close to it saw this in his future, because he's an exceptionally talented young man and a very good person at that.
And we, and I saw some video of him standing at Arrowhead Stadium and just, doing the 360 view of the stadium. You can just tell, because I've been there before as a DJing in front of 10,000 people in Mexico with 103 fever, holding up my headphones and just saying, man, this dream is actually, it came true. You know, it came true, and you can just feel it inside your heart, and it just inspires you to make sure you're going to do great things. And I saw that in Lewis. I felt the energy, and just having conversations with him, you know, videotaping. He said, Rob, can I see that video real quick? And then we look at it. He's like, what do you think of that footwork? I go, dude, it looks great. He goes, all right. So then he'll run that next route, and he just kills it. And then you can hear the coaches, like Coach Hagan. Shout out to Coach Hagan, by the way. You know, just pumping him up and say, man, he's good. He has that footwork. He's going to do just fine. And just with all that said, and then coming up to that picture, that was a more important picture for me to see, because I know what he was feeling. And I think with all the young people out there that are going to look up to Lewis and saying, if he can do it, then I can do it. And that leads into, you know, how does someone, and Roy, I don't want to take any questions from you, but I want to ask this question before I forget. How does someone that is looking to get into the program, the IPP, that's a guy from, you know, kid from India or anywhere in Africa or anywhere in the world for that matter, how do they get noticed, and what do they have to do to get into a position like this?
Well, historically, we've pretty much operated in the shadows. It's been hard to get hold of us, but I think we're out of that phase now. And we actually opened up an email address and inbox, ipp@nfl.com. And at some point, I'm going to be going through that inbox and seeing what we have in there. But for any aspiring athletes, I've been trying to point them in that direction. Any film that you think demonstrates that you have elite athleticism. I think a lot of people, because they like the NFL, they think it's for them. But I think you need to be reminded of the level and the caliber of athlete that it requires to be a part of this program and to do what these guys are doing. So just sending over film, date of birth, height, weight, measurables, all that kind of stuff over to ipp@nfl.com. And I think that's now a place that we have that we can field those requests and at least start to open ourselves up and be more accessible to the rest of the world.
James, you know, we talked a little bit about this before the show even went on the air, right? And I wanted to say that I think you are a bright young mind, and you're innovative and a breath of fresh air. And you know, at the age of 47, I appreciate history. So I have a little bit of the old school in me, but I also love innovation, right? We want to keep this great game going and moving forward. How many conversations do you have with Commissioner Goodell where you may talk about things such as this or other topics? And, you know, my hope would be to see you graduate and maybe get more involved into the commissioner's office. Do you have any goals or aspirations for that?
I mean, I'll answer the first question. I'm not speaking to Commissioner Goodell too much. He's a busy man. He's across a lot of things, but he has a lot of really talented EVPs underneath him that kind of oversee various parts of the business. And I'm fortunate enough to have a direct line into them and talk to them and report back to them on this program. And they're definitely very intrigued and interested and invested in how it goes and how it performs. And a lot of very happy people in New York at the moment with the signings that we've been having, which is great. I don't personally see myself going into that office in the future. I think my future is much more so in coaching and player development and being around the athletes as opposed to being in the boardroom. But the NFL gives us an unbelievable platform to do this work off of, and it's fun. It's been awesome the last 6 years to be a part of this business and this process and get to travel the world under the NFL shield. And I think the most kind of exciting thing about what we do, the wing of international, NFL International is a wing of the business. It's almost like a startup within the NFL. You know, the NFL is the big beast that's been doing things at a very high level for a very long time. And then international is kind of this really great incubator for creativity and innovation and new different ways of thinking and playing games abroad and trying to turn rugby players into NFL players. You know, we get the creativity and the freedom to do those things. And so it's an exciting time to be a part of international, and it's a fun side of the business to be on.
And we're coming up to about 10 more minutes with James. And James, I want to get into what's coming up, the NFL draft. And I know you're going to be there. I know there's a couple IPP guys that are eligible for the draft. Mm-hmm. If you wouldn't mind kind of talking about some of the guys that are eligible, who everyone should be looking out for, and how that all works, because there are some people that don't understand. Okay, so if Lewis gets signed, is he going to be on the main roster? Is he a practice squad guy? Some people might not know the analytics when it comes to that. So if you wouldn't mind explaining who is eligible in the draft and how it works for the ones that aren't eligible that got signed?
Yeah, so it's pretty drawn out, but I'll try and simplify it as much as possible. So
Sure.
effectively, players that come into the IPP are one of two things. They're either draft eligible or they are a free agent. And that is dictated based on when you graduated high school or your international high school equivalent. So it's effectively your age and how far removed you are from that graduation date. So if you are 3 years removed from high school, you become draft eligible. Anything more than that, you become a free agent, effectively, for international. If you go to a US college, the clock changes somewhat, but obviously our guys didn't play college football, so they stick to those rules. Now, guys like Lewis, Pat, and Charlie, they're all free agents, which is why they've been able to ink deals and sign to clubs and go and report now, and have had the freedom to do that. Other guys like Byron Matos and Travis Clayton are draft eligible, and so at the beginning of this process, you know about the draft eligible, but whether they're viable or realistic draft picks is a whole other conversation. Right. So as we've gone through this, Travis and Byron in particular killed the pro day, did a great job. They would have been the two fastest offensive linemen had they been invited to the combine in Indianapolis. And we got to a point where there was so much team interest and intrigue and visits being lined up and workouts being lined up for those two guys that we thought, you know what, let's bring them to the draft in Detroit. And you can never predict the draft. It's a hard thing. You know, experts spend months and months and months trying to predict the top 10 and all of them get it wrong on the night. It's so hard to predict, let alone the 6th, 7th round. But I think we feel good enough that there's enough interest that we'll bring them. So we're going to go to the draft with them next week. And what will be. You know, if they get picked, great. I think we feel good enough that there's a chance, which is why we're bringing them there. But if they don't and they get an opportunity to sign as an undrafted free agent, our messaging is the same to those guys as it has been from day one. It doesn't matter how you get there, but once you're there, you go to work. And there's been a lot of really great players that have been late round picks, a lot of great players, a lot of Hall of Famers who weren't even drafted at all. So a draft pick would be a nice added bonus, but we all know that success and the success that we're looking for is long, happy, healthy, successful, productive NFL careers as starting contributing players, not being a draft pick. So we'll see how that pans out. And then as it relates to them being practice squad players or active players, that doesn't really get finalized until the end of August when teams make final roster cuts and they kind of they really make those final decisions. So this time of year in this off-season period, teams are allowed to carry 90 players into their off-season kind of activities and programming, with a new rule in the NFL this year that allows all teams to carry an additional international player. You can, in theory, carry 91. And then at the end of August, once you've had training camp, once you've had preseason, the teams can then select, right, this is going to be my 53-man practice squad. This is going to be my 53-man active roster. This is going to be my 16-man practice squad. And this person will be my 17th practice guy, my international player. So whether Lewis or Chew or Charlie or Pat, where they sit within the roster, we don't know. Right now, they're just like any other guy. And then at the end of August, we'll know where they're being put within the roster for the 2024 season.
James, my final question, because I know we're running short on time. Again, thank you so much for taking the time to come on our show here. With these players, with agents, do you help them or do any of them come to you for advice on selecting an agent to represent? And I know in NCAA sports, there's the NIL program now where a lot of players are now getting paid for their likeness. And if they gain popularity and things of that nature, does that spill over into your program as well?
I'll answer the second part first. So the NIL in college football doesn't have anything to do with us in the pros. So it's not something that's impacted us, particularly on the IPP. As it relates to agents, really an agent decision it's a player building their brand, it's building their business, and an agent is somebody that works for you. And so that's a very personal question to answer for the player. If a player has a question about agents or the process of getting an agent, I'm definitely there to support, and we try and connect them with the NFL Players Association, who can also support them in that journey of selecting an agent, should that be something they want to do. But then when it comes to talking with these people, choosing who to sign with, that's a player decision. That's them building their brand, building their business, and effectively hiring an employee, which is what an agent is for them. So we try and make that clear to the guys that, you know, this is something that you've got to decide, and we'll be here to support how we can. But that is ultimately that's a player decision.
Excellent. Yeah. And, with that said, I know we're running out of time here. I want to ask you one last question personally. Um, Everyone's going to ask, is Lewis, do you think Lewis is going to make the main roster this year in the middle of the season due to the kickoff rule? In my opinion, being an Eagles fan for as long as I've been, knowing Andy Reid, I know what Andy Reid likes. I know he sees great potential. I know that he's been working out with Patrick. I feel that Lewis might make it on the field this year for a kickoff return. That's just me. It's my prediction. Do you think it's possible?
I think a lot of things are possible, and I think this program has shown that a lot of things are possible. I think that's definitely one of them. Whether that happens, there are a lot of factors within Lewis's control and a lot of factors outside of Lewis's control that can impact that. Another guy who might be in with a chance of that return spot might get injured in Kansas City. Lewis might get injured in Kansas City. There's a lot of things that can play out, so you never know for sure. I think one of the hardest things to get in this league, and what Lewis has right now, is an opportunity. He's got an opportunity to go in there and at least try and at least compete and show that he's coachable and show that he's competent and that he's the kind of athlete we know him to be. And he has that. That's in front of him, and that's all you can really ask for in this business. So I think he has a chance, and I think Kansas City making the selection of him and wanting to bring him in, I think, shows how invested they are in him and the possibility of him doing that for them.
Excellent.
James, again, I know we're running short on time here. I just want to take a different spin and ask you a fun question. The fans could get to see maybe a fun side or softer side. What do you do to decompress and relax after all this?
That's a great question.
Music, workout. You watch any other sports on TV? Favorite movies? Some hobbies?
I definitely try and work out, stay active. I think that keeps me sane. And just hanging out with friends and family. Truthfully, and I've had this conversation with people in the past, I think I get a lot of people all the time saying, it's such a cool job. You get to do this cool stuff. And I think you do have to remind people that it's something that really dominates your life.
Yeah.
And you don't get a lot of opportunities. And I think when you want to do something like this, I think you have to be conscious of the lifestyle that you're choosing to live. And I got back into the UK on Monday. I went home. I went straight back to work, and I'm in our office today. And we're already planning. I've got to join a meeting straight after this, planning for recruitment for next year. So I think I do enjoy that part of it. I enjoy that. I think the role becomes a big part of your life. I don't think everyone can do that. But when I do get a chance to switch off, movies, working out, and sometimes not talking football is a good thing. And sometimes it's needed. Not very often, but every now and then.
What's a favorite movie?
Favorite movie. I'm a big fan of the Rocky movies. I'll go back to the Rocky movies whenever I can. Another Philly reference for you there, Rob.
Yes, sir.
Yeah,
that was the number one song on my birthday, July 23rd, 1982. Eye of the Tiger was number one. Yep.
That is a good one.
That's my theme song.
And I'm a big guy. I do enjoy watching new movies. I like trying to watch things that I've not seen before and trying to discover stuff. Unfortunately, that mostly happens on airplanes. That's when I tend to catch up on my movies when I'm traveling. But nonetheless, definitely something that helps me switch off a little bit.
That's amazing. Well, James, I want to thank you so much once again for joining the show. Would love to ask you, would you come back on the show post-draft to kind of talk about the guys that definitely made it? Because I'm confident that the guys are going to make it some way, somehow. And I also want to thank you again for this. This right here means a lot to me and a lot of the Skill Show peeps, because this I'm hanging on to for the rest of my life. This is inspiring to me personally, and I know that you did something special for us. So I want to thank you again on air for letting that, for making this happen. This is great for that. All the guys signed it for us. So that's amazing. Very positive, inspiring thing. And just want to thank you. Roy and I are very happy to have you on, sharing behind the scenes, going backstage with us. And for the final message, like what I have here in my background, sometimes later is never, do it now. That's the motivation. I'm sitting on a beach for inspiration. Do you have any inspiration message out there for anyone that might be dealing with some tough times, that are looking to get their dreams right now?
I think I just reinforced the primary message of our camp in the class of 24, which was to be uncommon. That was something that we talked about a lot, and we talk about with our players that to be on the IPP means to be uncommon. You're different. you're an exception, you're an outlier in some instance. That's what gets you in the door. But then once you're in the door, we want them to embrace that idea of being different and throw your arms around it and really embrace being different, being unique, and being uncommon. And I think our players really wrapped their arms around that and really wanted to live that every day. And I think it was a huge calling card for us. But I think it's a really powerful message to everyone out there who's a player, an athlete, a coach, otherwise, even if you have nothing to do with sport. I think embracing your differences and your uncommonness, I think is a great thing and something to be proud of.
That's amazing. Well, with that said, James, thank you so much for joining the show. We hope to have you on after the draft. Good luck with everything. Stay healthy. And I'm just proud of everything that I was able to do with you. So with that said, I'm Rob Ragers. This is Roy Herman for James Cook. You've been watching House Jack City's Backstage Sports Edition. Until next time, everybody, we'll see you.